prospective husband is capable of taking care of a beloved daughter. The purpose of this negotiation is to measure commitment. It culminates in an agreed token of appreciation, which in past times was given in cattle or land. It was something of value to prove value. Today, one gives money as it is the common measure of value. Now, I call you back to the effects of monetization, the affluenza that blinds a man's self-sight to the point of redefining their character and judgment. Imagine a family paying bride price, doing so with a hefty check. This action may be sullied and labeled as purchase, laced with undertones of ownership, providing a crucial fact: money invested demands expectation. Now, why does this all matter? Human beings relate with the concept of something for something, input for output, that tickle that creates the laughter. A family may develop expectations of the daughter they paid so much for. A husband may feel his wife ought to act a certain way as compensation for the hefty bride price he paid. These feelings are internalized and begin the thought process that may ultimately lead to abuse and conflict. This brings us back to the question: has monetization led to a perception of ownership? The answer is a little complex, as no one can completely account for monetization being the sole reason for such an idea. But one thing stands certain: monetization contributes to the thought of it being nurtured. Families that think this way intentionally or unintentionally treat their daughters-in-law as owned properties. Adding insult to injury, the ratification and agreement of the girl's family facilitates her vulnerability to abuse, as the people responsible for her protection are agreeable to the situation. Now, in this kind of light, it's pretty clear that the notion at hand rings at its truest. But every story has two sides. People are different. Facebook users are not the same as Twitter users. Entrepreneurs are not job seekers. And Anfield will never be Old Trafford, however red it may become. Families vary in culture and tradition, despite the similar ethnic background that they share. A marriage brings these differences together. And while for some it happens amicably, for others it's turbulent and almost impossible. Husbands and wives may also fall into conflict for similar reasons. Besides obvious differences in culture, abuse can arise from a plethora of circumstances that range from personality to character, even some creative differences. A scenario is then created where a woman is vulnerable to abuse. Now, looking at the notion in this light, it is light-footed and consequently untrue. And so a conundrum is worked together. This question has no single answer because we are all involved. Those who see truth in the notion are as right as those who don't see truth in the notion. What matters is the conversation. The question opens doors to the whole story. Much can be said, but the much that matters is the much that can be done. How can the pace of societal evolution accommodate tradition and culture while maintaining its sanctity? How do we keep marriage and its processes within their original purpose? The most potent ideas are solutions to questions that concern each and every one of us. This, ladies and gentlemen, is an era where voices sound loudest. Let your answer to these questions be the one that lets the world hear yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Say, the educators wants your name once again.
My name is Panimaha Hikwa.
How did you spell that?
P-A-N-I-M-A-H-A.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Another resounding round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. To avoid twisting my tongue, say I'll call you Pani. Not Pani, of course. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor again to welcome the second contestant in the speech category, Madame Amina Mitchelle. A big round of applause for her. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. We can do better than this. Yeah, boy, yes. If we ever go. Over to you, madam. Do you need a microphone or you want to follow suit? Thank you.
Good morning. Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
What an amazing speaker, and it's a shame to speak right after him. It really is the audacity. Is my 7 minutes?
You started the minute you started speaking. You can stop. I will start again the clock. The time starts now.
Sure. I'd like all of us to pose a question to ourselves right now. If you're a woman, when was the first time you ever realized that you were a girl? For me, the first time I realized I was a girl was when I walked past a truck and a man old enough to be my grandfather said, "Makwele angu, I would have paid mazimombe for you." I didn't understand what that meant. So me being me, I went to my mom and I said, "Mom, a man said he was going to pay mazimombe for me if I had been in his era, if I had been alive in his era." And my mom said, "Oh, mawana yataka." And I was only 21 years old when I actually understood what that man meant back then when I was 14 years old. When I was 14 years old, he meant that he could have purchased me with so much cattle, right? So, someone is probably cringing at the use of the word purchase in my statement. So there are two schools of thought that you could either follow. But as one of the great scholars of the Great French Revolution said, man is born free, but is in every way in chains. And one of the chains that we have held onto as a society is culture. It's culture. And culture is our ways of doing things, our norms and our practices, right? But the thing with culture is as people evolve, it has to evolve with the people. And what happens when we hold on to cultures that no longer serve us? We need to come to a point where we agree that certain parts of our culture need to die. But no one has the right to hold a gun at anyone and say, this has to die. If you want lobola paid for you, then so be it. If you don't want lobola paid for you, then so be it. No one has a right to say, you can, you can't. You decide what you want, because man is born free and has to be everywhere free and not in chains. Not in chains of anyone's opinion and not in chains of anyone's culture. The very first point I'm going to raise for those who want to have lobola paid for them. If you're a Christian like myself, the Bible says she's altogether beautiful and beautiful to behold, right? And to love a woman is to honor her. And if money is what it takes to honor her and honor those who raised her, then so be it. But I would like to highlight a point here. If anyone is to do anything today, we should all not be quick to judge what they have done, but what we should look at is the motive behind, the purpose behind it. If you come with your 10,000 United States dollars and you flaunt them before my father and you say, right? As the Shona people would say, the Shona youngsters would say. If you flaunt it before my father like that, it's not to honor me. It's to raise your own ego and to say, I bought her, I purchased her. And in that sense, I become your commodity. And in the law of property, there is a greatly used term, which is the right of ownership, which is the greatest of all rights. And it comes into being simply because someone has been able to pay a price for something, which is the pretium, right? And the pretium, who determines the pretium? In most cases in African societies, your father, your uncle, or whoever is the predominant male being in your family that determine how much gets to be paid for you, right? Hence you have issues around they took our child for less than what we desired that they would have taken her for. In that sense, it ceases to be an honorary fee. It becomes prettier. So that's the first point I'm raising. The second point that I'm raising is that generally there is a psychological effect that comes with money. He who has it has power. And he who pays it has the ultimate power, right? So it then comes to you as the woman. Are you saying that you are worth that amount of money that your partner paid to your parents? Therefore, you are willing to go left if they say go left, or go right when they say go right. At the end of the day, I think how you see yourself and how you value yourself is going to determine the effect that lobola has on you, right? You still have a voice even though they have paid that money. You need to understand that this lobola being paid does not determine the dynamics of your relationship with this partner. Whether you get to make decisions in that home, whether your voice gets to be heard in that home, should not be dependent on how much they paid for you as a roara or lobola. The other point I'm going to raise is, no one is a commodity. No one ought to be sold. We need to shift our language as society. Our language as society. Language has so much power. When we say roara kutenga munu, as Shona people would say, or buying a person, then it means that we are reducing the status of a woman to that of a commodity, which is not true. However, if we say lobola or dowry or bride price is an honorary fee, then at the end of the day, what we have is a society that understands that a man in his full stature decides, I'm going to honor this woman who I am choosing to do life with for the rest of my days. I'm going to honor her family for raising her. I'm going to honor the woman who mothered her, the father who fathered her, and whoever has played a significant role to her becoming. I'm going to honor them with this amount of wealth. Then at the end of the day, we cease to have a society that only wants to dwindle a woman to the status of a commodity. So my call to all of us here is, number one, our major focus should be on the language that we use. Language has so much power. Language has so much power. It influences thought processes and it influences our perception on things. So if we are going to go about the world thinking that anything that we pay money for is a purchase, anything that we pay money for is a commodity, anything that we pay money for conveys the right of ownership, anything that we pay money for conveys the right to use, to dispose, to alienate, and to do anything, then at the end of the day, we create the wrong perception of this whole concept of roara. Culture is what makes us. Culture makes us a people. But at the end of the day, we need to be sure that we choose which cultures to follow and which ones not to. And it's all a choice.
Wonderful. That's out of picture him. Hey, madam, where? Come on, don't let it go. All right, got smiley. All right, Moniko mnogo to wake nae. Wonderful. Sweet. Do what no post oga china nae. So another round of applause for our second speaker. Wonderful.
Ladies and gentlemen, the notion stands. Monetization has led to the perception that lobola renders women the property of men and perhaps more vulnerable to abuse by husbands and in-laws. I take the notion to a greater extent. The paying of lobola has made a woman a commodity due to the prices that are being charged by our parents. Long back when we used to pay lobola, I would take a garden fork and take it to the woman I love as a sign of lobola. But now my parents have to buy a house in the suburbs to prove that their daughter was married. Thus, the commodification of a woman. Lobola now has become more of has become more of something that can be used to strip a woman of her rights, a sexual, social, economic rights, and be used to suppress her
as a slave. Earlier, before, it was used as a family uniter, which would unite two families. But now it is used to suppress the woman. She has no right to decide when shall she sleep with the husband. Shall she use protection or not? She is now vulnerable to a lot of diseases. That's why you see the statistics have gone up in terms of HIV and AIDS for married women and married couples, because the woman no longer has a choice, because she has become a commodity. Economically, she is not allowed to give suggestions within the house. I would like this new set of sofas. Please keep quiet. All the money went to your family. Sit on these garden chairs. They're as good as sofas. She has no right to ask, when I propose you, I will be a good liar. I will say, no, I will help you continue with your studies. But the moment I pay your lobola, it is a dream. You have no power to ask me about your fees, because all the money, even if it's 5 years later, went to your parents. It has socially stripped the woman of her rights. She cannot comment in public places or stand at this podium where I am. If I was a patriarchal man, you would be home crying just for putting on makeup because I paid lobola. Thus, you are a commodity to whoever who would have married you. If monetization of lobola is not twisted and turned into what it was culturally. We might blame our culture, but there are people who are greedy, who have manipulated the culture to their benefit so that they amass great wealth and quoted the connotation culture, even if it is not the culture. The culture is to unite two families, not to get rich. So by this, I stand by the notion that monetization has made a woman more of a slave or a commodity and stripped her of her human rights, her basic living rights, and turned her into a mob, a rag within the house, a family tool, a child-making machine, rather than a family member. On the other hand, monetization is also a sign of value to the woman. As I stand, if I were to be a father today, I would not let my daughter, who I've educated so proudly, go for a lesser prize. I do not deny the fact that I would be proud to take out my daughter with a large sum of money to prove a point, not because of greed. Thus, it is a two-sided, but to a greater extent, I, as Julius, stand alone and say that it has turned the woman into a slave, an animal, a non-entity, which is suppressed and abused within the house. I thank you.
Women and prone to abuse from their husbands. This is partially true because when we purchase properties, when we purchase pets and dogs, we can alter them. We can channel them into behaving the way we want them to behave. And that's what the husbands have turned our women into. They want them to do they want them to live their lives according to what they want, according to how they want it, because they have paid lobola. And when I was doing my research on my topic, I actually asked my friend, a male friend, and he said to me, yes, even if I buy a car, it's my money.
I choose what I want to do with it. And that's how our women are living their lives these days, because they were purchased. They're just like commodities, they're like properties, they're like everything men want them to be. They are subject to abuse. If you are beaten today, you cannot go back to your parents because they will tell you he paid so and so much amount of money and we can't afford to give him back the money, so go back to your husband's house. And you are forced to go back because you have nowhere to go. Thus, monetization has led to the vulnerability and abuse of our women today. They also do whatever they want you to do, and they just do whatever. It's a belief that a woman has to be beaten so that they can be respected, they can be do whatever. And you can't do anything because he paid lobola for you. So technically, you are his property. He can do whatever he wants to do with you. But however, I would like to believe that monetization is the least of the, is partially true. Monetization is not what has led to the vulnerability and abuse of our women. It is our culture that has made men to believe that they're superior than women. I've known people who are living with husbands who did not pay anything for them, but they're being beaten every day. So lobola has nothing to do with the abuse and vulnerability of our women. I've known people who have paid so much money for lobola and not even a single day had they touched their wives because they paid money. But I think it is the culture that has made men to believe that they are superior than women, and they have made to believe that women need to be beaten so that they can respect them, their husbands, and they can do whatever they want. I've also known women who are doing well with husbands who paid so much and who paid nothing. So I stand here and say monetization has led to the vulnerability and abuse of our women to a greater extent. But however, it is not money that has led to the vulnerability and abuse of our women, but it is our culture. It is the belief of men that they are superior than women. It is the belief of men that they should treat women in a certain way. It is the belief that if you don't beat your wife, you show your wife mercy, if you love your wife nicely, and they'll say she had put something in your food or whatever, but that's not it. It is just an abusive nature of that particular man to abuse her husband, his wife, not because he had paid so much amount. Thank you.
Wonderful. Another resounding round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Madam, like the tradition, let's shine in the same picture. Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
All right, so